There's a lot of new shoegaze bands coming up right now. Now, a few months ago, I made a video talking about Zoomergaze, which isn't really a real genre, it's just a name made to categorize the shoegaze revival. And since that video, I've discovered a lot more bands, and I just wanted to make a more focused video on the topic, and I'm not gonna assign some genre to it, you can call it whatever you want. I'm gonna try and go in an organized format here, talking about the more popular bands first, and then going into more obscure territory as the video continues. I guess that's basically what an iceberg video is, but I'm not going to call it that. There's already like 100,000 of those on the internet. I also might repeat myself a few times when I'm talking about the more popular bands, but you know, you can just skip over those if you want. And with that being said, let's get into this. For me, I think the patient zero of this shoegaze revival movement is Superheaven. Superheaven is a shoegaze and or a grunge band, depending on what your definition of that is. And they made two albums, one in 2013 named Jar, and one in 2015 named Ours is Chrome. As far as I can tell, they're one of those bands that didn't really pop off until TikTok got a hold of them, which, hey, I'm not going to gatekeep anything, okay? If you found this shit through TikTok, good for you. But regardless of when they popped off, they made their first album in 2013, so I would say that they were the ones that pioneered this more heavy and dark shoegaze sound that you hear a lot today. But despite the fact that they haven't made any music since 2015, they do still tour, and I really want to go to one of their shows. I'm going to give some song suggestions for anyone that wants to get into these bands, and for Superheaven, I would say definitely start with Youngest Daughter. It is by far their biggest hit. Poor Aileen is another one of their big hits that's pretty good. And the song Sponge is really good. That one's super underrated, but it's the first song on Jar. And honestly, just listen to Jar. It's only like 40 minutes. I mean, come on, you don't have 40 minutes to spare. Just listen to it. Probably the biggest of these bands right now is Julie. Julie is a fairly new band releasing their first song in 2020, and already they're basically the face of shoegaze right now. And while obviously their music is the main reason for this, take a look at them and their style and aesthetic. It's all very thought out in a way that gives the band a very cool aura around them, but at the same time it doesn't feel disingenuous, which I think is why it works. As of making this video, Julie is currently working on their first full-length album, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't super excited for it. This one might be controversial, but I think Title Fight deserves to be on here. Now, I feel like when most people think of Title Fight, they think of it as more of an emo band, not a shoegaze band, but I do think that their sound has been influential enough for both variants in the modern day, so I think that they deserve a spot here. Their album Shed is a great place to start, but in all honesty, all of their albums are great, and they're only like 30 minutes each, so if you have a bad attention span, hopefully that helps you. Fleshwater is the last popular shoegaze band I'm going to mention. They've only been around for 2 years and they're already a household name, which is crazy. They're also by far the heaviest band I've mentioned so far, taking huge inspiration from, you guessed it, Deftones. But in no way am I calling them a ripoff. I think they're still very much worth your time. And with that being said, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into some bands that are still fairly popular but are still considered underground in most people's eyes. The first of these bands is Narrowhead. Now, to be fair, Narrowhead is pretty popular, but I just don't feel like they're on the same level as a band like Julie. But regardless, they still kick ass, and I actually got to see them a few months ago at a relatively small venue, and I got to be like right up against the stage. It was fucking awesome. They have a phenomenal EP called Far Removed, which is a great place for anyone to start listening to them. And they also have 3 albums, and I would say that they've only gotten better with time, with Moments of Clarity being their best work by far. Another good one is Modern Color. And while I mentioned earlier that Narrowhead takes a lot of Deftones inspiration, Modern Color leans more towards that title fight emo side of things. They've been making music since 2016, but their album From the Leaves of Your Garden that released in 2020 is pretty much what they're completely known for these days. And for good reason too, this album definitely has their best work on it. It's also just really good mental breakdown music, and if you don't know what I mean, just wait till you're sad and play this album.
Hold on, there was something wrong.
Also, at the time of recording this video, they very recently released their 4th album, There Goes the Dream. And it's pretty good, but at the same time, I don't feel like it's getting the attention it deserves, so if you want to listen to Modern Color, I would highly suggest this album too. And they also have a nice, quick EP from 2021 called Now Life Is Living You. So if you want a really good starting point, I would say this EP or their 3rd LP, From the Leaves of Your Garden. It's really up to you. They're both really good. This next one, Soulblind, might be my favorite band on this list. They've been making music since 2018, and for a good while they were just releasing some singles and EPs, but in 2022 they released their debut album, Feel It All Around. And I've gotta say, I do feel it all around. This shit is extremely solid and heavy. It's like if you took the heaviest moments from Superheaven's albums and made an entire album out of it. If you want to get into this band, just start here. This is the perfect place. And if you want to get into heavier shoegaze as a whole, I would say start with this album too. Their song Stuck in a Loop is by far their most successful, but for me, Seventh Hell is the best one. The guitar just immediately sounds like it's punching you in the face over and over again. It's just this amazing wall of noise, and I highly suggest checking that one out. The last band I want to mention sort of doesn't count. It's kind of debatable. The band is Sweet Pill, and they're not exactly the most abrasive shoegaze band, but the way their songs are structured and their overall aesthetic, I think is enough for me to want to put them in this video. I'll just say this, if you like these other shoegaze bands, you'll like this one too. They have an incredible album from 2022 called Where the Heart Is, as well as a new EP called Star Child. And with that being said, it's time to talk about the underground shoegaze bands. The bands that are very solid, but at the same time don't get the fan recognition they deserve. Up first, we have the band on screen, Split Chain. Split Chain and the next band I'm going to mention are probably the heaviest bands on this list. I'd like to talk about some of their EPs and albums and where to start, but the band's entire discography only spans 20 minutes. And on top of that, all their songs have been released separately as singles. Now, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but most of the time when I see a band do that, they get a lot of their popularity from TikTok. And not that that's a bad thing, but in most cases when a band pops off because of TikTok, it's usually because of their single releases. So I get the feeling that Split Chain knows what they're doing when it comes to getting attention. And I do hope that they release an EP or album in the future, but they did go through the work of putting together a playlist of their discography, so I guess that sort of counts. I know it sounds like I'm hating, but I actually like every single song this band's put out. Most of the songs are very similar sounding, but my favorites are Haven and Chalk. Now, the other heavy band I was going to mention is Bleed. Now, Bleed and Split Chain seem to have a lot of similarities, and I don't know if it's a coincidence or not. Like, there's no way that their logos just both look like this. Although Bleed came out first, so I guess Split Chain's the guilty one here. And while I really like them both and their style of music, I think Bleed just does it a little bit better. They released a 4-track EP in 2021 called Somebody's Closer, and one single in 2022 called Killing Time. And unfortunately, I don't know if they're still an active band. I don't follow them enough to know that, but fingers crossed that they release more stuff in the future, because everything they've made so far is amazing. Seriously, if you're a fan of shoegaze, especially heavy shoegaze, this is a must listen. Best songs are Silver and Burnt by the Sun. If heavy shoegaze isn't your thing, that's perfectly fine, because the band All Under Heaven are experts at making soft shoegaze. Something unique to me about this band is I always find the singing to be a lot more memorable in these songs than the instruments. The dude singing, who I think is this guy, is really fucking good at it. And that's not to discredit any of these other bands I've talked about, but you'll notice with shoegaze, the main theme is that the instruments are supposed to be the focal point, not the vocals. And for All Under Heaven, I would say they still are a lot of the time, but the vocals definitely stand out on their own. I think their song Alley Cat has the most prominent vocals. And they also just released their first album, What Lies Ahead of Me, which has so many good-ass songs on it, and it is not getting enough attention, so please go check it out. For me, the album starts a little bit slower than I'd like, but the second half is really where it shines. Specifically, the songs Demon Time and Believing, they just feel like the most complete songs to me, and also Believing has a really nice bass intro. The last band I'm gonna mention is the newest one. That band is Wishy, and they actually opened for Narrowhead at that same concert I was at, so here's footage of them. Fun fact, during the show, the drummer broke one of his drumsticks and the dude next to me got to keep it, so shout out to that guy. Now, when I first heard Wishy, well, I was at the front row, so I was getting my fucking ears blasted off. But when I went home later and listened to them, they actually surprised me. They had some pretty decent songs. They've released a few EPs and singles in 2023, but during the show we were at, they actually told us they were releasing an album in August. And that did indeed happen. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this album surprised me. It's just so nice and easy to swallow. It's a relaxing 40 minutes, it's a perfect length, and every song feels like it was made with purpose. So if you're gonna listen to anything from this band, this is absolutely the place to go. And the highlight tracks for me are 777 and Love on the Outside. They're both extremely catchy, have great hooks, great instruments, great everything. Go listen to it. And with that being said, I think this is the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Like I said at the beginning, I know I've already made another video on shoegaze, but I really like this genre and I wanted to dive into it a little bit more, so I hope you guys enjoyed the bands I talked about. I know there's going to be some debate on some of the bands I talked about, which is perfectly fine. I'd love to hear your reasons for why you think certain bands shouldn't be in this video, and I'd love to hear some bands that I missed. Tell me what I missed, what should be in this video, what are some of your suggestions, let me know. I always like to hear about the smaller up-and-coming bands, so if you guys know any bands like that, let me know, put them in the comments so we can support them. I know my video output has been a little bit shit lately. My motivation hasn't exactly been through the roof lately, but I do appreciate everybody's patience who sticks around. And hello to all my new viewers. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'm glad you like the content for some reason. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will try and have the next video out a little bit sooner than this one. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one.